Okay, in the last video I did where I was talking about the mobile crisis unit being unconstitutional, I promised to make a more in-depth video about tough love. And strangely enough, or I guess you could say ironically enough, I'm having to rip an article from a treatment center of all places that's questioning the efficiency of tough love. Now, of course, you know, what's the old saying? One swallow does not a summer make, nor does one article provide absolute proof of anything. I mean, for every article that I found about tough love, I'm sure there's plenty of articles written by 12-steppers and treatment centers and other AA apologists and other types of even religious pages I saw that promotes the idea of tough love. But I wonder if a lot of people out there are aware of where the concept of tough love is when it comes to treating people with addictions, which I've often said is just a license for cruelty, or if they know anything about the actual results of what tough love being practiced is done. It's kind of like you've got a million articles out there that says AA is a wonderful thing and helps a lot of people, and there's a lot of facts and figures plus personal experiences from a lot of people I encounter on the internet that can verify that that's simply not true. But anyway, this one article, which I believe, I chose this article out of the dozens I found because it seemed to provide a little overview of the history of tough love, but you'll see what I'm talking about. I'll just dive right in with it. The title of the article is Tough Love Doesn't Work, New Approaches to Helping Addicts. I don't see the author's name near the bottom even, so I don't know who to credit for this. But it says, most people have heard of tough love. While it originated in the medical and addiction treatment communities, tough love has become synonymous for any instance where persons with authority are strict and either use punishment or ostracize someone in order to enforce something. In the addiction and rehabilitation community, tough love has become the standard for families to treat their children or even their adult family members by shutting them out, imposing harsh restrictions, and even disowning them when they fail to quit or follow through on, say, rehab or treatment or other conditions. But increasing evidence shows that tough love doesn't work. In fact, it may even do more harm than good. And it begins with, where does tough love come from? Most practiced instances of tough love in the United States date back to the 1950s in a single rehabilitation program called Synon. I think I'm saying that correctly. I've never heard it said out loud. I can tell you right now that Synon, it was an actual type of cult that originally was targeted at young children who were troubled, and it was used for any number of things, from just kids not getting good grades to drug addiction to everything else. In fact, Synon, if I'm saying that correctly, is a whole entire other video subject in itself. I could take a long time talking about that. But here they just break it down simply saying the program focused on using a tough approach of punishing bad behavior in severe manners that eventually actually resulted in the death of several people. Now, while the program was closed in 1959, it was quickly adopted by multiple other organizations, with one offshoot of it even becoming part of an international program pushed by the government during the war on drugs in the 80s. As a result, a single program advocating punishing people for mistakes and slips in recovery became the standard in national recovery methods, and therefore a standard in even home care. Today's professional treatment facilities often use tough love standards, and it's used at home, but it doesn't actually work. And it's weird coming from a treatment center. I hate having to read an article from a treatment center, as I've already reiterated, but like I said, why doesn't tough love work is the question. We as people crave affection, belonging, and support. More importantly, we crave those things from the people who mean the most to us, primarily friends and family. That support and the motivation of family is often the largest driving reason behind successful recoveries. I wouldn't actually have any personal experience with that. I had to cut off the majority of my family from even talking to or seeing them. As for so-called friends in the AA community, I didn't find a single one. So I'll have to, I can't tell you if having a supportive network of people is actually, it would, from a common sense standpoint, you would think it would be actually more successful to have people supportive of you than people just demeaning you and attacking you and insulting you like I had to go through, and like many other people that I know who watch this channel have had to go through. Tough love approaches cut cut addicts off from their biggest supporters, giving them reasons to be angry, alone, and afraid, and therefore more likely to turn to their primary drugs or alcohol as coping mechanisms. Well, now I can speak from experience on that, yeah. Me personally, like from my own family member, all I got was a constant barrage of insults, a constant angry hatred of everybody towards me, and and a constant reminder that I had never amounted to much in life and never would amount to anything in life, and that I was probably going to die drunk. I got the same kind of responses from AA members when I had a number of relapses, and I've reiterated that before in other videos, but, briefly you're told, why don't you just go drink yourself to death, or why don't you go to a bar and drink, or, you're just incapable of wanting to quit, or you really don't want to quit, or you're in denial, and all that other bullshit. Which does indeed, if you're actually looking to someplace like AA, which I don't recommend anybody do because it's just a phony cult religion, but if you're looking to that as your support network, and if you have family that were anything like some of my family members, and I'm not going to say every single one of them, but a lot of them were like, and I might add that a lot of these people that were giving me all this hard way to go, they actually were either heavy drinkers themselves, or some of these people didn't live with me. So they didn't really have a reason to be the way that they were being. But anyway, before I go off on a tangent about my own personal experiences, this is kind of a bulleted list of everything that this particular writer, who there's no name here so I can't credit him, says. Tough love is authoritarian. People often recover from a place of support and love. Even in modern treatment, results are achieved by showing addicts that they are loved, that they're valued as human beings, and they're capable and able of being better. Well, I don't know what they mean by modern treatment. I was in treatment, let's see, in 2009. I did a stint in a mental hospital after a suicide attempt in 2009. I was in treatment, court-ordered, via drug court for a little while before I was in outpatient treatment. And I didn't see, in terms of modern treatment, I didn't see anything that was encouraging or loving. 99% of the so-called treatment that I've dealt with, and the people that I guess you could say network with online, their experiences with treatment is much like mine. It's just one big promotion for AA and the 12 steps. Not sure that this particular site is any better. To be honest, it's a questionable source in terms of what they're promoting, but this article is dead on. And I'll link it in the comment section below, and, like I always do. For example, and they give a name, shared the story of how abandoning tough love in favor of sharing education and caring eventually did what 6 years of tough love could not, and helped their son recover. Tough love is about knowing what's best and acting accordingly rather than trying to understand and trying to protect a child when they make mistakes. Tough love encourages addiction. Most people wouldn't think that shutting someone out until they go to a rehab would encourage more substance use. But it does. Many addicts use substances as a coping mechanism, and negative emotions like anger, grief, sadness, and loneliness make them more susceptible to using. So while tough love may push addicts to hit rock bottom faster, neither tough love nor hitting rock bottom is likely to make users quit. And that's another thing that they promote in AA quite a lot. Maybe you haven't reached your bottom yet. And to jump in here real quickly, one thing that I used to see a lot of in AA from these insecure bullying assholes, that they had nothing for their identity but their 20, 25-year medallions or their 10-year medallions, or whatever the number of years was, that they felt gave them a license to have their asses kissed, and they're treated like some kind of royalty who, outside of their bullying and tough talk in the rooms, that's amounted to all that was from them. But they would say stuff like, I'm not here to baby you. I'm not here to babysit you. I'm not here to be nice to you. I'm here to save your life. Well, the funny thing about that is I never asked nobody to fucking babysit me or save my life. Or baby me as far as handle me with kid gloves. Okay, I can take harsh truths pretty well. In fact, I would rather have blunt truth thrown at me than I would somebody handling me with kid gloves or whatever. Now that doesn't include outright insults, or just outright demeaning comments, because you're not actually helping save my fucking life or anything else when you're doing that. You're using tough love and you're using saving my life as a reason to demean and cruelly mistreat either me or other people that I've seen mistreated in recovery by that very same types of moniker. Oh, I'm not here to baby you. No, you're just here to talk your tough shit and go home and feel like you've done something grand tonight by making your appearance at some meeting and putting on that phony tough guy attitude, Anyway, I'm about to go off on another tangent. This doesn't mean enabling them, but it does mean being there, listening, and taking steps to show that person you love them even when it's hard. For example, ensuring that a drug user has access to naloxone to prevent an overdose. Now there again, and I don't mean to play a devil's advocate here, but yeah, if you are stuck in a situation, let's just say where someone who is addicted to a substance is physically abusive, is emotionally abusive, is stealing from you, is doing harmful things to you, and they're using their substance abuse as an excuse for that, then no, I don't believe people should have to tolerate that. But I don't necessarily think that falls under the guise of tough love. Okay, like if I'm letting somebody live with me who's got a drinking problem and I'm trying to help them, and they come home and they punch me in the eye and they break windows, okay, on more than one occasion, they steal from me and they do all kinds of other things to me. I mean, I'm going to tell that person, you're going to have to go. Okay, but that has nothing really to do with tough love. I'm not going to tell the person that they have to go to AA. I'm not going to tell the person they have to go to this treatment center. I'm just going to, if you're going to live with me or if I'm going to support you, same applies to me. I never was physically abusive to people when I was a drunk. I never stole from anybody when I was drunk. And of course, I'm sure there's a lot of AA people out there snickering like they used to do in meetings and say all alcoholics are thieves. Well, that's just a gross generalization and it's not true. But I did want to throw that in there. If you're dealing with someone who's addicted to something and they're wrecking your house, fucking up your life, or stealing from you or abusing you, you shouldn't have to take that. But to continue, it says tough love is easy. Locking someone out and refusing to deal with them anymore is the easy way to approach someone with an addiction. It says it's not your problem, and if they're not going to try, you aren't either. Well, that's a fair approach because you're by no means obligated to do anything for anyone. It's an easy way out, and it does hurt people with addictions. People turn to drugs and alcohol for a variety of complex reasons, and abandoning them will often not solve their problems. Taking time to learn about addiction, well, now that depends on what you learn about addiction. If you talk to a bunch of AA people like my family did, and you get a lot of bad advice from AA people like some of my family did, there was AA people that even tried to encourage certain family members who were already kind of had a predisposition for cruelty, but that it was for the best to make me live on the streets. It was for the best to try to call my employer and get me fired. It was for the best that, all this bad stuff was supposed to be imposed upon me, like some kind of imposition in order to make me get well. So I'm going to put a disclaimer on taking time to learn about addiction. Knowing how to prevent an overdose, yeah. How to be there for that person takes some effort and some patience and some actual love. So what to do instead? Now, I'm going to put a disclaimer on some of these solutions, but many people choose tough love not because it's easy, because they're afraid that offering some support and education will result in enabling drug and alcohol use. While the risk is real, there are many alternatives that support you and your loved one without enabling. And I used to hear the word enabling thrown around so much in the 12 steps. It's another 12 in the rooms of AA or in the 12-step meetings that it's another word like spirituality and recovery and others that's just become ruined. For me, I haven't found an alternative to use for it yet. But it says the more you know about your loved one's addiction, the more rationally and logically you can approach it. Take the time to read about addiction. Again, take the time to read about something accurate. To visit needle dispensaries in areas where they're available, to read books, and to talk to your loved one about it. Addiction is complex. It's driven by many different things, which eventually become a habit. There's no simple or easy way to approach it. By learning how to prevent overdose, how to even safely administer drugs, and how or what to do in case of an overdose, you can ensure that you're ready in case the worst happens, while showing your loved one you care enough about them to understand even though they are using, they're still a person valued and deserving. I'm going to jump in here right quickly to also say there is a broad brush that I've seen AA defenders and AA people paint everybody who's got a problem with any substance as being like emotionally immature or needy or manipulators or users. You know, it's really funny that AA claims that it doesn't want to paint the negative stereotypes of alcoholics, but I can show you a million different quotes throughout their literature that just makes us out to be the worst people on earth. In other words, they enforce that negative stereotype so much, and that negative stereotype is enforced so much in our societies that literally it's embedded in the common populace. I'm going to say it's embedded in their brains that if you got a drinking problem or a drug problem, you know, then you must be inherently dishonest, inherently immoral, inherently bad, and all the other negative things that 12-step groups try to enforce. And to be honest, I know that family members can't see internally what you're going through when you're addicted. I know that mine couldn't, the ones that were using unlicensed cruelty. And some of them weren't even fucking living with me. Some of them even wasn't doing a lot of interacting with me. They were busybody type people that just loved to jump into people's private lives and fuck them up if they had the capability and the opportunity. But, you know, no matter, because, and what I was getting at, what my point was about to be is most of the time those people would be about, you know, just look what you're putting us through. Just look what you're putting everybody through. Just look at how you only care about yourself. It's hard to convey to people who don't have an addiction what it's like when you are turning up the bottle every morning and you don't want to do it. When I was at my worst, towards the end of my drinking, when I was, you know, guzzling vodka at 4 o'clock in the morning to stop the nausea and the shakes and all that other kind of stuff, I mean, I truly did not want to live like that. I truly wanted that to end. I truly did not want to put people through hell. Okay, and the negative reinforcement that every time I was swallowing some vodka, I was somehow destroying everybody else around me, did in fact make me more suicidal. I mean, a lot of people would say suicidal people are cowardly people, and I detest that statement, and I might even do a whole entire video about that. But it did, in my own twisted depression, when I was at my very lowest point, okay, when I was rolling out of bed at 4 a.m. and I was guzzling, you know, liquor, and trying to stop the shakes and trying to stop the vomiting and all that other kind of thing, my mind literally would come up with ideas like, you have absolutely nothing to live for anymore. You have absolutely no reason to continue your existence. Your existence is useless, okay? Your family freaking hates you, okay? All your former friends have abandoned you. Maybe the world would be better off without you, was literally how I would think. That's how deep the depression gets when you're caught up in that addiction and you're not getting anything but unbridled anger and hatred and just outright, you know, malicious behavior in your direction. I mean, it's not a good way to be, and it's not a good place to be. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. But I'm just saying that that's one thing that tough love did to me personally, and I know it's done it to a lot of others out here who are watching. The next thing the article suggests is set limits. While detaching with love has often been interpreted as stepping completely away from an addict while still loving them, there is another way. By setting some boundaries and following them, you can protect yourself while still being there and supporting them. In this set, you set limits for yourself, what you are and are not willing to do, and what you're not willing to accept, so forth. I think I kind of covered that earlier when I said you don't have to take abuse. So I'm going to skip a little bit more with that. Tough love is the most accepted way to deal with an addicted person in the family. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. We understand that mental disorders like bipolar disorder and anxiety need treatment, acceptance, and long-term care, and as a disorder, addiction is often the same way. The addict needs understanding and caring alongside boundaries to develop the motivation to get treatment or to try to clean up their act and stay sober. I don't encourage anybody to really seek treatment. And you know, sadly enough, this is an article that I ripped from a treatment center, which is naturally going to say you need treatment. Now, I'm not saying that if you're hopelessly hooked through the bag, that you might not have to go to a hospital, you know, to get detoxed or whatever. I mean, there was a couple of times I did not end up in an emergency room when I'd been drinking for months at a time and not eating, and I was having all kinds of health problems. I touched upon one in a video I did, you know, about my neuropathy and stuff, but literally, had it not been for being in an emergency room and being given certain medications and being held there for a few days to get me off that alcohol, and of course, even after you get off the alcohol completely, you still feel all weird and fucked up after you get out of the hospital, but That's one thing, but putting someone in treatment for 6 months and 12 months to, I don't see that as necessary whatsoever. In fact, I see that as, like I've talked about in other videos, it's just a big money-making conglomerate, and it's pretty much monopolized by the 12-step community and the 12 steps themselves. I mean, there's very few treatment centers that I know of that offer a different approach other than the 12 steps, and the one or two that I have found out about that advertise on television, well, you might as well have hundreds of thousands of dollars, to deal with them. But that's pretty much my opinion on tough love as well, even though it's ironically enough coming from where the source here is. I could, like I said, do a whole entire another video on Sinan. I mean, that was mainly targeted at teens. It involved everything from gay conversion to bad grades in school. It was where kids got shipped off to these so-called wilderness camps and all kinds of other things like that. I mean, it's really got a shady and dark history. It's just amazing how something like that, like Sinan, has somehow managed to get into the public consciousness where the majority of people think the right way to treat somebody who's got an addiction is to treat them like shit in the hope that they'll get better. I used to see, and I'm going to close on a personal note, I guess, I used to see so many family members that would be going off on me and insulting me in every way possible. And I remember on a few occasions I'd say, well, you want me to fucking die. That's what it sounds like. No, I want you to fucking get better. Well, it really doesn't sound like you want me to get better when you've told me that I'm a failure, that I'll never quit, that I'll never amount to anything, that I've never amounted to anything, that I've never done anything right in my life. That doesn't really give me a motivation to quit. I'm almost, I don't want to use the word grateful because AA has ruined that word for me, but in truth, I got a better term. There's something in the old text called the art of war, and I know it's quoted a lot in films and everything like that, so I don't want to be cliche about it, but there was something in an old text, the art of war, Sun Tzu, Shun Tzu, I'm fucking Jersey, I can't pronounce these kinds of names, but anyway, it involved death ground is what it was called, and death ground it involved placing troops in a position where their back was up against the mountains, where they were cut off and hopelessly outnumbered, and were able to overcome the odds and fight anyway, and win, sometimes emerge victoriously because they were literally, their back was against the wall and they had no other choice. With my addiction, I was literally in a place of solitude when I quit. Okay, I had no support network. I had no, AA was long out of the question. I had nobody really to rely on, lean on, or anything else. And, I'm not advocating the freaking tough love thing. It was a very, very terrifying place to be, but I realized that there was no magical 12-step solution, that there was no wave of the wand, that there was no religion, that there was no anything that was going to help me get out of this addiction but me putting the fucking bottle down. That was the only thing that was going to work, was me and me alone. It was, it was up to me to do whatever it was in front of me to get through it. Now, I've been without a drink for a fairly long time, so it's easy these days, but it was tough as hell, in the early days of isolation. But for me, that was a great place to be. It was my death ground, I guess you could say, because I didn't believe that there was some higher power that was magically going to take away my problems, and I didn't believe there was a solution in 12 steps and taking inventories and sitting in those meetings, listening to those phony shares and all that other kind of shit. I was truly on my own, and that was the best place for me to be. Don't advocate you do that, okay? Get sober the way I got sober is not highly recommended. It was horrible, but it was well worth it for me. But you don't have to actually drink yourself into that position. The myth that you have to hit a rock bottom, the myth that you are powerless, the myth that you have no control is absolute bullshit. It's just what I said it is. It's a myth. You can quit without having to hit a bottom. You can quit without having to lose everything. And you can quit without the 12 steps or without a bunch of bullshit called tough love. Anyway, that's all for now, and hopefully I'll catch up with all of you soon.